On today's DNVR Nuggets podcast, we're going to be breaking down ESPN Survey. They made some predictions about MVP, champion, best in 5 years from now. We're going to talk about that. Also, can the Nuggets still be the team of the 2020s? Remember when that was our goal and our dream? Is it still on the table? How would Jokic fare in the 80s and 90s? And then ranking the best highlight mixes on the Nuggets. All that more in today's DNVR Nuggets podcast. I'm like, wow, every step down. Oh, baby. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the DNVR show. Live from the Toyota Lounge, driven by your Front Range Toyota stores. Toyota, the official vehicle of DNVR. Official vehicle of fall. I feel like if there was a month where the Toyota really shines, it's in the fall. Or maybe that's just where I most go to the mountains.
Yeah, I don't know. That might be a you thing, but whatever, dude. Let's sell it.
Let's just
great
sell it.
Fall vehicle. Toyota,
Great winter
man.
vehicle, too, man. It's going to be neck and neck.
Yeah, you just make sure you go to your Front Range Toyota stores now.
Great show for you lined up. I told you all the headlines, but I got Brendan Vogt in the house with me today.
Man, what a treat. Another day, another chance, another dollar to
$1.
another chance to have a great show and to pick up the energy of the Nuggets faithful as we head back into what I think is still the golden era out of Mars.
I still think so, too. You know what, though, man? It's so true every day. I'm not ready for the Nuggets yet. I'm going to be honest. I'm not ready. But every day, I get just a little bit more. I'd say I'm at like 60% ready.
It's like a comic book character or something. Like, we have to charge it up. We're not there, but we're like, we can feel it, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to reach full power soon.
We really are going to reach full power. And there's like exciting stuff as everybody starts to get back into town. You start to see more video clips and different things. You know, obviously football is the big story. I will say Thursday, CU starts the season. It feels like the beginning of sports season. No disrespect to baseball.
No disrespect. Listen, out here it's hard. It's not really it's like more of a purgatory season. I can't wait, dude. I got back into college football like from the jump. I watched that FSU Georgia Tech game.
Really?
Loved every second of it.
Did you really?
And I was like, I'm ready to go full sports guy again.
Your soccer vote. You've turned into soccer vote this year. You're going to become college football vote too?
I think I have room for it all. I don't even know what I'm rooting for. Just kidding. I'm rooting for CU.
Are you?
I'm rooting for a good game on Thursday. I can't wait to see it.
A good game?
A good game.
Wouldn't that be bad for
kidding.
CU?
I have not picked any side. I have not picked any sides in the CU.
You little chicken. You little chicken. I don't know if you've been on ESPN lately. Why would you? But
I wanted to see some memes. Oh, you mean the website?
The website, yeah. They actually have a website. They sometimes update with stuff. They do this thing every year where they do a survey, right? But it's the weirdest survey. They do a straw poll. That's 100 media members. That's a pretty good sample size. Your margin of error is not that great. And of course, it obviously has an influence. This one's weird. 18 people, not even 30. 18 people who they say are general managers, scouts, and executives. This sample size is so messy that I don't actually know why you do it.
It doesn't really tell you anything.
We should do a DNVR poll, and it's like, we interviewed 7 people, and we're going to tell you how the season's going to go. The Charlotte Hornets have a great chance. We're like, did you interview Nick? Yeah, we interviewed Nick.
Who are we to complain? It's a Tuesday. We need a show, and I'll get upset about this stuff. I'll find a way.
Well, there you go. But before you get upset, I'm going to start on our very first one. Do you have cards for this, Kale? I haven't even seen.
No,
man,
let's
super
go.
producer Kale. I don't even need to ask. Why did I ask? It was insulting to have even asked. Our very first one. Who is the NBA's best player right now?
Let's go.
Look at this. 18 people, 15 votes for Jokic, 2 for Luka, which I feel like is, okay, whatever. People are going to put out their guy.
Yeah.
Anthony Edwards?
I haven't really ever felt super compelled to take a bullet for Giannis. But what are we doing, man?
This shows you how fast you can fall off, man. Because Giannis is the same guy he was 4 years ago.
And we all talk about that 20-1 title, like good for them, but we don't want to be the Bucks, which is
right.
It feels like kind of an unfair way to frame what they ultimately were able to accomplish. Do I think Luka and Jokic are better than Giannis? I do. But I don't know about Anthony Edwards, man. We can slow our roll a little bit, I think.
But this is where the 18-person sample size, because if they would have upped this to, let's say, I don't know, 50 people, how many votes do you think Anthony Edwards would have got there?
It's a really good,
maybe just one,
really
right?
good
Like
point.
we found the one guy. They interviewed one scout for the Timberwolves.
But to focus on the fun part,
yeah,
nearly unanimous at this point.
I feel like 15 out of 18 is pretty darn good. Like, unanimous is tough, I feel like, in any year. I think LeBron James had several unanimous years. Obviously,
Yeah.
Michael Jordan had many. But I think outside of that, man, even Giannis in his peak and all these different guys, there's always been someone that's like, I don't know, though. I kind of feel this or that. But I think that, like jazz, the music, sometimes it's the notes that weren't played that mattered. No Giannis, no Joel Embiid.
Right.
Anthony Edwards got a vote, but not Embiid.
Right, because that almost tells you that someone wanted to get cute with their vote more than they thought that serious discussion was a real one. You know what's funny, though, man? Like, I know people roll their eyes when we talk about this stuff. To me, this is the shred of significance to Jokic being the number one ranked 2K player as well. Like, we felt like we've known this stuff based off actually watching basketball for a long time. But now I think that's the most, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way at all. I think that's the most casual stamp of approval you can get. Like, at this point, you just ask the average person, hey, who's the best player in the world? That's Jokic. Or you're in for a fun argument.
If we go to the next question, though, so I love this. Jokic kind of still wearing the crown. If you go to the next one, though, who will be the 2024-25 NBA MVP?
Different question.
A different question. And what do you know? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander got most of the votes, with Luka Doncic getting 5, so 7-5. Then Anthony Edwards gets 2. So now we up the Anthony Edwards sample here to 2. Jokic gets 2. Tatum gets 2. Interestingly enough, on Bet365, Jokic has the best odds. And I didn't know that. I don't know if that's changed. He actually has the number 1 best odds at MVP, which is interesting. Luka at number 2. But people think Shai number 1.
I would think that this is a take that goes hand in hand with just a take about the Thunder in general.
They're going to be good.
And as far as at least the regular season goes, we'll just start there. I think they have next to just be far and away, I think, the best, like, across 82. Just because they have the roster to just, hey, let's throw a different lineup out there tonight, still win. Like they are, I think, probably the deepest team out west at the moment, and they do have an MVP candidate at finalist last year in SGA. So, like, they have all the ingredients of a strong 1 seed with a best player who had a I'm on the scene kind of season. So, I get it.
If you look at the odds, number 1 is Jokic, number 2 is Luka, number 3 is Shai. Giannis, once again, not pictured, which, again, tells me the sample size might just be, like, very incomplete. There's no way they don't think he even has a chance at MVP. I mean, he has a chance, right? His odds are number 4, but they don't have him anywhere on the list.
You'd think voter fatigue would have dissipated by now, right? Like,
it's been a couple years.
Yeah.
3, 4 years.
I can't believe it, man. Listen.
The disrespect, huh?
He is, I think, in my opinion, a cut below the guys who control the game in a certain way.
Right. I agree.
But as far as everyone else, I do think you have to start with him. Like, all these other, across 82 games, like, dude, that guy plays every game, plays so hard, and he produces. And I will actually say about, I don't, like, Giannis is more game planable, I think, in a playoff setting than Jokic. But he's, other than Jokic, he's the next guy I would mention as a floor raiser right now in the NBA. Like, he's on your roster and he's healthy. You're a top 3 seed and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So I do think there's some Giannis disrespect happening.
Yeah, I definitely think there is. But let's now move to Anthony Edwards, because I think, actually, let me just ask you your own. How would you handicap this personally? Give me your top 3 most likely
to win the MVP.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Luka, Jokic, SGA.
I think Luka, Shai, Jokic. And I just think it because the 4-time thing, man, we've been through this so many times. He's going to have to double win it. He's going to have to be like 20% above everyone else in order to win it. You're also talking about the Nuggets having to be like a top 2 seed. I even think being down in the 3 seed, if you're not close to the 1, that could play. And so I just think there's a lot working against Jokic this year.
But I think
he'll be in the conversation all year.
Well, that's the reason why his odds are always high. It's like, worst case scenario, he's like the 3rd or 4th guy.
I think he's going to be everybody's 2nd or 3rd choice.
That's the thing.
He could win off of that, though.
The floor of his production is almost unfathomable. I mean, we've seen it before. Yeah, sure. By like LeBron. It's ridiculous.
Well, let me ask this, though. So Anthony Edwards then shows up again. 2 out of 18 votes go to him for the MVP. I would be pretty surprised if Anthony Edwards was your 2025 NBA MVP. I actually find this one to be kind of crazy that there's 2 people. Jason Tatum also has 2 votes. He's on there, your boy. Tatum is way more likely to me than Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, it almost feels like there's a collective, let's say, conversation or investigation right now. Like, what is the ceiling on the Anthony Edwards takes? Because we all agree he's
great.
And that is
top 10 player in the NBA.
Yeah, and great as in, well, I hope he misses,
Yeah.
But it does feel like, how far do we take this?
In 3-4 years, 2-3 years, I think that he'll be in this conversation if he continues to grow. But to make that leap, it just feels a little premature to me.
I think if, and listen, credit to them for downing the Nuggets, man. Like, it was impressive. I think if the Western Conference Finals went a little bit differently, people might be more bullish. The other thing is, this is, of course, not a knock. He is 23 years old, man. So if it's another couple years,
he's going to be 25?
So, yeah.
You know how many people win before 25? Not many, so it's a little wild.
Maybe not his time yet.
Joel Embiid also not getting any votes here. I have to imagine the 65-game thing plays a large part of this. He's going to have a dominant year.
That's the thing about Joel. There's also a bottom line to how good he is, as much as we nitpick.
Yeah.
If he plays enough games, he's in the conversation, if not a favorite. But
right.
I think it's fair to ask at this point if he's going to play enough games.
Who will be the NBA's best player in 5 years? I love this question because it's always fun. I wish we could go back. Maybe somebody has the link to that. You could shoot me or something. The link to 5 years ago.
It's never
accurate, man. It's always way off. But who will be the best in 5 years? Victor Wembanyama dominated this one. 12 votes. This might be the most dominant we've seen this particular question. Shea got 2. Luka got 2. Anthony Edwards got 1, and look at that. Jokic gets tied for 1 5 years from now. I love it. I hope Jokic's the best player in 5 years from now. It'd be incredible for him to have an 8 or 9 year run as the best player.
Shout out to whatever Nuggets executive was pulled and threw that in there.
It's probably Tim Conley, honestly.
Yeah. He's like, Anthony Edwards.
Nobody higher on Jokic than him.
No.
It's Anthony Edwards. Somebody said Ant?
Somebody said Ant? No. I mean, he's great. I think it's Victor, or I think it's Luka. I think there is a Jokic-esque transformation for Luka to go through, which is, I think, sharpening the finer points of being a winner and a best ever as a competitor.
Yeah.
And I think whatever I'm loosely articulating was just seen in the finals. Whether you think people are too harsh on him or not, there's a little too much complaining, not enough defense, a lot of time on the floor. This is all stuff Luka can grow out of and honestly turn into a Jokic-esque player. But Jokic did grow up in that way. If Luka does at 30, man, I think he's probably going to be unstoppable. But I understand that Victor as well, he's entering his sophomore season as probably the best defensive player on the planet with a high offensive ceiling. So I am not shocked at all to see him running away with it.
He seems like an overwhelming favorite. The way he would not win this title, if he is the best defensive player in the NBA, which feels like a lock, I think he's going to be that this year. But if he's the best defensive player in the NBA, but offensively, he's just very unreliable. Like, can you run your offense through him in the clutch? He doesn't have enough wide variety of skills, and he's really just a jump shooter. And is he actually as good of a jump shooter as like a Durant type or, whatever? That's the world where it becomes more ambiguous, because I think the defensive part is a near lock.
Yes.
Health is the one thing, but then the defensive part is a near lock. It's just offensively, is he a super Anthony Davis? And we never talk about Anthony Davis as the best player in the NBA, even though he's dominant defensively. Wembanyama, a whole other level of dominant. But if you're not that on offense, you just never are fully in that conversation.
I agree, man. I think there is a way in which Luka and Jokic and LeBron James are all cut from a similar cloth. Like, there is a control of the game, IQ kind of court mapping, just whatever buzzword you want to throw on it, right? The just understanding offensive basketball at a level that there's virtually nothing that can be done defensively, and not just because you're 7'4" and you can hit a step back,
right?
But because there's no defense that you don't know how to exploit as a team, as the leader of a team. Can Victor get there? Absolutely. But it is funny, man, for everything he has shown in his skill, which is really, really impressive and ahead of schedule, is he gonna be that? Is he gonna control games the way Jokic and Luka does? Because that's a high bar, and there are a lot of high bars to clear before you even get to things like, one of the best center prospects we've ever seen, stuff like that.
We'll do one more here real quickly. Actually, we'll do two more here. Who will be the 2024-25 NBA Rookie of the Year? Zach Edey got most of the votes with 8. He has the best odds, by the way, plus 500. Reed Shepherd came in second, which I feel like those two guys, to me, feel safe. I mean, Zach Edey, it's really about he's most ready now. If we go to the next one, though, really quickly here, who will be the best player 5 years from now from the rookie class? Edey falls off the list. So he's going to be the best one in year 1.
This is really interesting.
But will not be anywhere in there by year 5, which is interesting. Reed Shepherd makes the list on both. And then you get a bunch of guys like Topic and Buzelis, Carrington, Connect, who didn't make the other list, who made this one. I will say, if you pull up the other one, the first one I told you, Rookie of the Year, Stephen Castle, Tristan Da Silva, Rob Dillingham, Alex Sarr all got votes. That tells me that that's wide open.
Yeah, and it's definitely not going to be one of the top 2 picks. Reed was 3, right? Do I have that right?
Reed was 3, yep, I believe so.
Okay, so I hated on the Reed pick in the draft. Believed he was a really, really good player. Just wondering, like, how excited can you get about a tiny little fella that high in the draft?
Then you saw him and he was
Then I saw him in
saucy.
Summer League, and he was so saucy. So I am buying Reed Shepherd as the guy from that class.
This rookie class might be the least interesting, though, that we've had in a while. I'm way more interested in the second-year guys and stuff like that.
I think it's almost understated the extent to which the top 2 picks are irrelevant.
Yeah.
Like in the
Anthony
media,
Bennett style, where you're
dude,
like,
no one is even. But even that, even when Anthony Bennett had like, man, why did they do that? This is just like, well, they
Nobody
did
cares.
it. Yeah, no one cares.
Well, you know why? Because it's Washington.
Yeah.
The Wizards got him. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, the predictions continue, including who's going to win the title, who's going to win each conference. We'll get to that and more.
I'm a short fella. I cannot see the top of my roof from the ground, but also due to how high roofs are, there's a good chance you can't either. So you should
Great lead in.
You should send some roofers up there. Let's get specific. How about the best roofers in Denver? Red Hawk Roofing. Quality materials, decades of experience, quick response time, Colorado's best estimators and contractors, huge DNVR supporters, really great hangs. You might not think that matters. It does. You're going to be on the phone with them. They're going to be around your house. Like, you don't want them to be annoying. These guys are actually really sick. Ask them what they think about Jokic. Free no obligation roof and property inspections, free in-depth photo reports, and you guys know when you're living in Colorado, just because it's sunny, just because it looks like summer doesn't mean your roof is safe. In fact, it may already be damaged, so make sure you send the fellas up there. Supporting your local teams means also supporting local businesses like Red Hawk Roofing. If you're looking for a new roof or home over your business, a new roof over your home or business, you probably don't want a home over your business. Maybe you do. That's not the point. Be sure to check out Red Hawk Roofing at redhawkroofing.com or call 720-771-8921. Tell them that DNVR sent you. One time, Adam and I got to go up on the roof with the Red Hawk Roofing fellas.
That's right.
I immediately regretted not bringing my shady rays. It's very sunny. It was very bright up there.
It was scary going up that ladder.
It was also scary going up. It was scary going up that ladder. That's the kind of thing I looked at. I'm like, yeah, whatever. That's fine. And then I got halfway up and I'm like, not everyone does this job for a reason. But back to shady rays. They make doing manual labor easier if the sun's out. They make walking through the street easier if the sun's out. They make everything easier if the sun's out. Get ready for the sun with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Even if you thought you were right when you picked them out, that this is your style, then check them out. They're not your style. Well, they've got a great return policy. When you shop with Shady Rays, you're shopping risk-free. And exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code DNVR for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 100,000 people.
All right, back here, segment 2. Hop in the Toyota chat if you guys are watching along. I think it's just Cedric Exquisite these days in the chat.
No, there are other people, but they're just drowned out. We love you, Cedric.
They're drowned out. So hop in there and let us know what you think about all of these different things we're going over here, all the different surveyed predictions. Which team will win each conference was the next question. Let's start with the East. 13 of the 18 votes came in with the Boston Celtics. 2 came from Milwaukee. 2 of them came from New York. 1 for Philadelphia. I think that's right in the 4 teams that have a chance. I mean, maybe Milwaukee again, man. People are low on Milwaukee. Oh, the 18 people surveyed were low on Milwaukee.
Yeah, I mean, being a little low on Milwaukee right now, I kind of understand as opposed to Giannis just because of the way that they've gone out, which has had a lot to do with Giannis injuries. But they're going to be in the conversation. I I'm glad that the Knicks got a couple. Like, I don't think the Knicks are going to win, but I think you have to consider them in that circle.
Yeah.
My Knicks fan friends are so upset about how last year ended. I just think they're in the convo, even if they're not favorites.
I kind of not buying the Knicks. Is this terrible to be hopping off the Knicks?
No, I mean, not necessarily because the conversation's changed. You're not saying the Knicks are bad.
Yeah.
It's can they win the East?
I think they're going to be like they were last year.
Yeah, and that's maybe not clearing the hump. So fair enough. And then Philly, look, I think
one vote.
There is a thing with Philly where if it all goes right, you can talk yourself into it. But you just have to remind yourself that that is what you're doing. You're talking yourself into everything falling into place for the first time. Paul George's health, Embiid's health, so on and so forth.
Yeah. The Celtics overwhelming favorites, I think, is right, though.
Can't argue. Can't argue.
Would be such a letdown if they don't do it.
Wouldn't that be something?
If you go out to the West, only 3 teams received votes. The Thunder got 14. The Mavericks and Wolves each got 2. Not pictured. The Denver Nuggets.
No.
Hey, we're back.
Fraud City.
We're so back.
I
Like an
almost
old
wore the
hat.
shirt. Like
Here we go, baby.
Oh, this thing still fits.
It still fits.
Feels
Nobody
great.
believes in us.
I love it.
An 18-person scientific survey and not one picked the Denver Nuggets, Kale?
I have a one hand and one other. Oh, go ahead, Kale. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, so scientific.
Yeah. This is math. This is science. I have a on one hand, on the other take for this one.
Okay.
On one hand, when you're on a national perspective and you're trying to sift through this stuff, Denver Nuggets lose in the second round. Not a disaster by recent repeat standards, but they do. They do. And then for the second year in a row, they lose a key player in free agency. So as you're looking at it, you go, all right, are other teams on the rise? Are the Nuggets on the fall? I think just on a base level, that is fair.
Yeah.
There is a but, though. When the Cavs were horrendous, like absolutely horrendous, but they still had LeBron James on their team, they were never out of that conversation.
Right.
Now, the East was also bad.
Yeah,
and LeBron
that's part of it.
Literally did go every year, which is insane. But to me, Jokic has earned he at least needs to get a vote. I know if there were more people, they would have. But if Jokic is on your team, you have a chance. And while they did lose key players, they certainly did. And I understand this analysis. If Jamal's still there and Jokic is still there and Porter's still there, you have to consider them. And that's just my feeling.
And if you go to the actual championship title, the Boston Celtics now have 8, the Oklahoma City Thunder 7, and then you get 1 apiece for Dallas, Milwaukee, and Minnesota. So only 2 people said Bucks out of the East, and one of them has them going all of the way. But if we look at this, it's really Boston and Oklahoma City. I kind of agree with this, that I think those 2 are the big favorites. At the same time, is it weird that I can see the Thunder getting out of the West, but for some reason I can't picture them winning it? I don't know why.
They would still be young, by the way. Like we said, they were so young last year, and they looked it, and so they didn't win the West. They can still show improvement and not be ready. That wouldn't be unreasonable.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I just think the Thunder are like, there's nothing blasphemous about this. Everyone's looking ahead and seeing a team that's on the rise with ways to get better still. Like, it makes tons of sense. I still think they actually need to go out and show it, before I'm 100% there. I will say this, though. If you include all 82 games and the playoffs, like, just look at it that way, the most complete rosters in the NBA, Boston and Oklahoma City,
right.
I think that's fair. So
if we look at this, the Celtics are favored, the Thunder right there. If we step back now and look at the whole 2020s, we did this a lot last year where we talked about could the Nuggets be the team of the decade, and they had the most momentum. I think last year, if we handicapped it, Nuggets #1 most likely to be the team of the 2020. But now that they dropped 1 year, and not only did they drop it, but the Celtics ended up getting them, they were probably the second best odds to be the team of the decade. And now that they're even with Denver in championships, in the 2020s, you have 1 for the Lakers, 1 for the Bucks, 1 for the Warriors, 1 for the Nuggets, and now 1 for the Celtics. There's 5 more to go in this decade. So if you were just handicapping it personally, try to remove as much bias, which is going to be double hard for you here because it's Nuggets and Celtics, as well as everyone else. How would you handicap the team you think has the best odds of being the team of the decade?
I think Celtics 1 is fair for now. It could all change fast, but I think they're probably best suited to repeat of any team in the last 6-7 years that's tried. Said that about Denver last year was wrong, but I do think Boston is equipped to do it.
And they have their guys locked up. This is one of the
up.
things, yeah.
Even if they just get 2 more, like that's...
Even if you get one, I mean, maybe one more does it, who knows?
And they're going to win a lot of games in the regular season, so no quarrels there. I do wonder about the Spurs. The thing about the Spurs is they still have to put the team together around them.
There's 5 championships left. Do you think they're winning this year?
No.
All right, so take that one off the table. There's going to be 4 after that. If you just told me they're winning next year without like a major trade, now maybe they make a major trade or this or that, but I don't know. I even look at that and I go, I don't know that they're winning this year or next year off of organic growth. I think at the earliest next year you're talking about, are they fringe contenders or something? And so if you limit it now to 3 years where you think they might at the earliest be ready to push the chips in, and they need to get at least 2 in that span, maybe 3. I understand the impetus to say at the end of the year they might be ascending to that, but I just don't think it's going to. I think they're going to run out of runway in the 2020s.
Dude, I agree. Also, Victor could be every bit as good as they think, and you could still not win one in that time frame. I mean, It's not. So, yeah, I'll keep them out of the top 3.
Okay.
Celtics 1. Then it's OKC and Denver, and I understand like Denver's momentum right now looks like it's headed in the wrong direction. They still have Jokic. And I still believe Jokic is a 3 MVP, finals MVP caliber player, one of the very best players I've ever seen in any sport with my own 2 eyes. They also already have one. I'm putting them ahead of Oklahoma City. I think
Oklahoma City has 0, so and 0 finals appearances.
That's it. That like even if they still have to get one. So look, I don't want to pretend to be like ignorant here. If you're playing like GM or internet GM, there are 100 million different ways you could make an argument for the Thunder having the brightest future. And I won't even argue. I'll just say like things still need to be realized. And in the meantime, Jokic is still a guy that like, it's a golden ticket to the conversation. Even if you don't believe in the roster, like Jokic is a guy you still have to beat out west. He's already done it once.
Right.
I'm going Celtics 1, Nuggets 2, Thunder 3.
I think that order is actually correct, in my opinion. I think it goes like that. Because Denver, like you said, as well as it's a little bit down, I think that Denver is too depressed of a value right now that it should be. Like, they're still a top 4 team in the NBA with the best player in the world. So they have a good chance. And then on top of that, if we just forget this year and try to move forward, right, after this year, there's the Aaron Gordon question. They're going to have to figure out Aaron Gordon. That's a big question. But not this season, but the following season, Jokic should still be the same player he is right now. Maybe even slightly better as a playoff performer, but at the very least, the same MVP caliber player. Jamal Murray should still be in his prime. Michael Porter should still be in his prime. And now you're talking about Christian, Julian, Peyton, guys on the roster that we think are long-term. They're definitely going to be better a year from now than they are this year. So you look at it and say that even if you think Denver is has lost something from what they were in 2023, I think it's realistic to at least expect the next 2 seasons to be ascending, right? Like they should be getting better just naturally off of internal improvements. So I think the Nuggets should have a window that's open. They already have 1, so they only really need maybe 1 more, maybe 2 is all it would take to be the team of the 2020s, and I think it's there.
So go ahead, keep cooking.
Well, then I was just going to say the dark horse team to me, which is the Dallas Mavericks. And they have Luka. They just went to a finals. They went to a Western Conference Finals. They probably need 2 titles. I don't pick them to do that. I think that they are kind of the team that they were last year. I think they're going to be good, but if you told me they're going to win 2 of the next 5, I'd be like, yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But
it's possible, I guess.
It's possible, man. I just don't think Dallas has as many paths to there is a chance that Dallas got the very best out of themselves as this iteration exists last year, and that now they still have a bit more exploring to do to figure out the roster. I understand they added Klay Thompson. Did they add anyone else?
Quentin Grimes.
Yeah, Quentin Grimes. All right. Helps the rotation. But I think the Mavericks, a tremendous year last year, spearheaded by a tremendous player. I still think they have to prove that they're in the conversation with teams like Denver and Boston.
Yeah. Lastly, if we go to the end of the list, so I have Spurs kind of as the dark horse, just because what I said. They'd have to win, and realistically, for them to do this, they win in 28-29. I just don't see them winning really before that, unless they make a crazy trade. And they were so bad at the beginning part of this year. You could make an argument, the Celtics have been to the finals multiple times in this decade. So if they win 2 and Denver wins 2, but they went to 3, they might edge out Denver just alone on, hey, they won their conference more frequently.
And they also just win a boatload of games. By the way, Denver does this too when healthy, underrated in this discussion.
Yeah,
but
Denver
these two
punted 2 years.
Like these two teams the last half decade to me have clearly separated themselves from everyone else.
Yeah,
so.
I think you're right. But my dark horse here outside of the Spurs is the Lakers. Now, the Lakers aren't winning one with the current iteration of them, but they are the Lakers, and they do have one. And that's part of the calculus here. Like, if they won in 20 and 29, do they get team of the decade, even though they were 2 completely different teams? I think they probably just would if nobody else got 2. So the Lakers are a dark horse candidate here, even though I don't see this version of them winning another title, and it's probably just a whole different crew that would have to come in and win it for them.
Yeah, the Lakers got a placeholder spot for 3 of the best players in the league just decided they wanted to go there.
Yeah.
So fair enough.
So that's what they get.
I like this conversation. I don't think it's unfair to anyone. Dallas has earned being mentioned. I just think Dallas, like until they win one, I just don't know if they're Denver or Boston in this conversation.
Who was Dallas of a couple years back? Like, there are teams that got there. You never really took them seriously to win it, but you're like, oh, they surprised us and got there, and then never make it back. And you're like, well...
Yeah, maybe peak Portland, but I think Luka's a better player than Dame was. So
Luka's definitely a better player. You're almost talking about like the Houston Rockets or something, which I know they get compared to, Luka gets compared to a lot. But it could be that, where it's like, yeah, they were really good for 4 years. Really, really good. But they never won one, and they kind of just get forgotten. They're not at all a team of that era.
Alternatively, Luka could learn every lesson from these finals, and they could go get 2. But I just think in terms of handicapping it, I like where you have them.
All right, let's take a break. On the other side, I keep thinking about this Anthony Edwards. There's no skill in the previous eras. I don't know if you saw Kevin Garnett's response, and it just made me wonder, how would Jokic fare in each decade? What would that look like? We'll talk about that on the other side.
Adam, when you go up to the mountains, I know what kind of car you take.
That's right.
I know you're probably bird watching.
It's the Highlander.
And or teaching your children something about the outdoors.
That's true. They built a really cool shelter this last when I went up there.
Did they really?
They went outside on their own, built a nice little lean-to. It was pretty impressive.
What kind of cooler are you bringing when you head up to the mountains?
I always take the same one.
Rugged Road?
That Rugged Road.
That Rugged Road. It's dedicated to creating innovative and durable outdoor gear for adventurers who demand the best.
Kel, have you ever had cooler envy?
I with the Rugged Road, I do. It popped in the office, and I was like, I'm mad I don't have that.
I'm telling you, when you show up to like a camping trip or something and somebody has a cooler than you, it's like, oh man. And they're like, let me see your cooler. And it's like, it sucks. That sucks. That's a bad moment. Don't get cooler envy.
Their products are designed with the highest quality materials and craftsmanship, and you can tell whether you're on the land or the water, Rugged Road gear is built to accompany you on every adventure. Yes, we're still talking about the cooler. Floatability, folks.
It's the coolest cooler.
One of the best features of the Rugged Road coolers is their ability to always float upright. I know some people like to talk about the best different beers you can have, like a shower beer or like a
floating down the
cooler
river.
beer.
Yeah. I think that's the top beer. I've never done it.
Practicality be damned.
We
It's
don't have
amazing.
a ton of places to float through a river in Colorado, sadly.
Let's go find one. But you can take your Rugged Road cooler and float safely and drink responsibly. Get ready for your summer adventures with Rugged Road coolers. Head to ruggedroadoutdoors.com. Use the code DNVR.
Look at that cooler on there, man. I'm telling you, it is cool.
10% off your order with code DNVR.
That rhino gray color, too, a fantastic color for a cooler.
It's so good. And it's lightweight, Adam. It's durable.
I would say it's the top color for a cooler.
And it's always floating upright. Perfect on land or in water. So leave that old heavy cooler at home. Get yourself a better cooler for the new season. Rugged Road. It's your
I don't even know what the second best one. Maybe it is actually the green olive color there. That's the background for that lower third. That's a good color for a cooler, but I think the rhino gray is the top.
I don't even know if I'm going to get through one line of this next read. It's Toyota.
Hey!
The official vehicle of DNVR. As mentioned before, great options for taking a car up to the mountains, all-wheel drive. They've got great trucks. Maybe you just want a nice, smooth ride for the city. Maybe you're looking for something that hits that sweet spot. Most of your days are in Denver, but you got a free weekend. Taking the kids, taking the fam, taking the dogs. You need a Toyota. Shoot, you could be into low and zero emission vehicles, and you know that Toyota has more of those to offer combined than any other automaker. Do yourself a favor, Coloradans. Visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe in Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota, proud partner of the Denver Nuggets, the official vehicle of DNVR.
And we are back here, segment 3. Throw us a like if you're watching. If you're new to the show, hit the subscribe button. We do this 5 times a week. All right. So the Anthony Edwards thing, we talked about it very briefly yesterday. He disses the old guard. He says only Michael Jordan had skill back then. Nobody else had any skill. Nobody else. Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, they do their show together, and I saw like a 7-minute clip, obviously supremely bothered by this one. But then they also made it clear that they weren't part of MJ's era. They're like, we were the Kobe era, which I found very interesting.
Which I think a lot of people would maybe think if you weren't Kobe, less impressive. But maybe they're saying, no, we were in the
kids love
era.
Kobe, though.
Well, because Kobe was a shadow of the form. And
but not to the kids. He was the better version,
right.
to the kids.
That's
he was the better MJ, which is wild to me.
He was taking the torch and carrying it forward.
And I love Kobe. I loved him in his day, but come on.
You know what I love is how, despite everyone knowing that there are clearly exceptions and nuances to all their point, we have this conversation in categorical terms. No one, only.
Yeah. He was the only one.
The
Let's
only
go.
one.
Well, but here's what I will say. As much as that conversation to me annoys me, the NBA is the only sport that does this. Like, nobody ever says, oh, would the 90s Cowboys beat the Patriots? Or like, oh, no way, because they're passing and this. Like, nobody does this in other sports. We kind of have this appreciation for how every generation stands on the shoulders of giants. But with basketball, I will say this. If we can have a nuanced discussion about that, and I'm not sure we can, we'll try. When you start to go through different eras, it is fun to say, okay, what stylistically defined that era, and how would Jokic's game translated? So let's start with the 2010s. And look, Jokic came in 2015, so we can cut off the back half of that, which is, to me, honestly, I actually think you can cut off the NBA at 2015. I think the first 15 years of the 2000s are way more similar to each other than the last 10 years, because the Warriors really did change everything, and the 2015 is the year they changed everything and made things different. But if you go before that, let me tell you who was the centers on the 2012 NBA All-Star game. Dwight Howard.
I remember this.
Marc Gasol.
Okay. Good play. Great player.
Roy
Tremendous
Hibbert.
player. Fading fast, but he had a moment.
Andrew Bynum.
Okay.
That's the top centers of this 2012. Let me tell you something. Marc Gasol is going to give Jokic a hard time, but Jokic's a better player, man. I'm sorry. He's just better at everything that Marc does. He's better at it. Roy Hibbert, get out of here. Are you kidding me? Do you know what Jokic would do to Roy Hibbert?
Listen, Roy Hibbert seems to be a very nice fellow. Also,
He was on the Nuggets, by the way.
Aspiring podcaster. Have you seen this?
No, really?
Oh, he's out there making content. And with all due respect to Roy, he just may have been in the content game a bit sooner had Jokic been in the league. That's
It's a good one. That's a great
sorry,
line.
that was a bit much, Roy.
Dude, Jokic would murder Roy Hibbert. That would be Roy Hibbert is the type of player that completely came around, exploited one thing, and then everyone's like, oh, okay, Jokic would have murdered him.
That Pacers, in 20 years, no one's going to know that Pacers team, but they really did have some series with LeBron.
And here's the one. Andrew Bynum was actually really good for a short stint.
Yeah.
I think by 2012, it was a little bit gone. Andrew Bynum at his absolute apex, on his best night, gets absolutely cooked by Nikola Jokic.
I mean, this is, to me, it would be like the DeAndre Ayton rookie year stat line. Come here, bud. You are very talented. You are very athletic. Here's how you play NBA basketball.
So I think if we just go back to the right pre-era where he came in, there's no question to me that Jokic would have been absolutely dominant. Kendrick Perkins in the finals. In 4 different finals he played in from 2008 to 2012. Yeah, 2012. He played in 4 of those 5 finals. Just to show you what a valuable piece he was as a center. You know what Jokic's doing to Kendrick Perkins? Get out of here, man. Jokic would have been incredible in the era preceding him.
I actually would have loved to see that.
He would have been great. If you go back to in the game at that point, Jokic could still play his same style. I think more or less it would have been the same. If you go to 2000s, Shaquille O'Neal, Dwight Howard, Tim Duncan, Ben Wallace, Yao Ming, Pau Gasol, Dikembe, and Kevin Garnett are kind of your bigs.
This is a bigger challenge.
Great era for bigs, to be honest with you.
Really great era, man.
Shaq versus Jokic is an interesting discussion. I think Jokic would have really murdered him on offense just because he would have dragged him so far out of his comfort zone. Especially 2000 Shaq. 90 Shaq was a little more nimble. 2000 Shaq, on defense, I think would have really had a hard time guarding whatever team you build around Jokic. But I don't think Jokic would have been able to guard Shaq. I mean, nobody could guard him, and I think Jokic would have been the same.
I think about just putting this Nuggets roster, there'd be nothing they could do. Foul like hell.
Kind of. The one thing I will tell you, though, is that Vlade did a pretty good job against Shaq. I mean, Shaq still got his numbers into this stuff. And part of what makes Jokic so special, I always say, they're like, oh, he's a 7-foot, LeBron or whatever. He's LeBron in Shaq's body.
Right, because he's huge.
Because he's so strong. And I think while Shaq was way more athletic and as strong, I actually don't think that he would have just pushed Jokic out of the way. Like you see some of the old videos, of course, where he would get somebody he was too weak for, shoves him out, dunks on him. I think Jokic's actually stronger than most of those guys in a way that Shaq would have still physically been closer to equal in strength, way more explosive, way more nimble.
I think Jokic would foul out in like 30 seconds. I don't think
he would foul out in 30 seconds, but I do think that he would foul trouble would be an issue.
Not saying because he would be necessarily. I could just see the way that matchup would go. Jokic doing floaters and finesse, and he's getting hit on the elbows, and no one cares. Shaq's trying to dunk. Jokic lightly brushes his elbow. It's an and one. Like I could see that happening in a heartbeat. But I don't remember this. What I remember are the New Jersey Nets. Like it's almost a dream. I was so young, but I just remember Shaq being so physically unstoppable that I almost cried because I thought it was unfair.
Well, the one thing about Shaq though, he did get bested by Duncan, a lot. Like, and we think that Jokic and Duncan can be comparable. Duncan's a better defensive player, so there's that. But the other thing about the 2000s is Jokic might have been a power forward. They played just a lot of two big lineups. It was more traditional, like Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan. Those guys were power forwards of that era. Jokic, I think, would have been a guy that could have been a little bit of both. Like he probably would have played a lot of center in that day. But if you go up against a Shaq, like, okay, I know this is going to sound wild. All right, bring in DeAndre. They're playing each other side by side. In that era, that's how they would have played. And now you're talking about him guarding like Rick Fox, this type of player. Look, I think Shaq obviously is probably going to get the better of him, but I think this is where you get to where Jokic's game most would change. The spacing's going to be different. He's probably more physical of a player, probably more of an interior player, but I think he would have adjusted really nicely and still been one of the top players of this era.
I have two names that really stand out to me as well. One because I think it would be the hardest, and one because I'm curious about. To me, Tim Duncan, because he's brilliant, like it's defensive brilliance and not just capability, like literally brilliance, understanding footwork, the shifting of weight, the timing. I just we watch all these guys that have all the springy athleticism in the world, and Jokic kind of turns them into like grasshoppers, and they just can't. But I think Duncan would probably maybe be the best we'd ever seen at like not biting on that fake or staying down here or just the discipline of it. And then Kevin Garnett, just because of the way you mentioned it, like if he, depending on who he's playing alongside, is this like a too big thing where he can sort of guard Jokic, but there's a roamer, or he's the roamer, or however you want to look at it. Because I know he was so versatile and brilliant in that way.
There's no matchup I think I'd rather see than Duncan versus Jokic, like prime Duncan versus prime Jokic. I just would love to see what that looks like.
Me too.
Both directions, like how they guard each other, how they fared. Pau Gasol was one of the best centers of the 2000s, and I think Jokic's better than him. So you look at, sometimes you just do that. Then there's guys like Dikembe Mutombo who still were very effective in that, and I'm like, Dikembe wouldn't have had anything for Jokic. I think Jokic would have murdered him in every direction. Or his little soft floater.
Yeah. Or like maybe even the best case for Dikembe would be kind of like a Rudy arc, where they're early on, he's got, but then by the end, Jokic has it figured out. But
the other thing Jokic does to players like Shaq, and this is an underrated part, he does it to Gobert a lot, but I'm just saying guys who are a little slow-footed, he's really learned how to catch on the move. And it's a weapon. Like, it sounds so silly, but when he's going up against big guys, he'll always run into the catch. And like he's not that he's faster than guys, but when you get a running start before them, you are faster than them. And he's perfected it. And I think Shaq would have such a hard time. Anything outside the foul line, I think Shaq would be a fish out of water guarding Jokic.
I don't think that's silly at all. I think it was an essential part of his MVP ascension.
Yep.
And you combine that with what he did to Anthony Davis, to a guy who would be even worse equipped. Just run. Every rebound, every make, just run. I think Jokic actually would be able to run Shaq off the floor.
When you start to get to the 90s, it gets really interesting. So you have Shaq and Hakeem, Robinson, Ewing, Mutombo, Alonzo Mourning, Vlade, Rick Smits. It's an era of centers, really, in this 90s. You have some great ones. It's a younger Shaq, it's a prime Hakeem, and it's a prime David Robinson. But here's the biggest thing when you get to the 90s. This is where the three-point shooting really goes away. Like in the 2000s, you still had a little bit of that spacing, even though it wasn't the same. In the 90s, the game is so much more condensed. So first you go off the talent that was there, but then you think about like how would Jokic's game have to evolve in that era? What would be different about it?
It's an interesting question.
I'll give you one real quick here first. Three-point shooting is Jokic's biggest weakness. Mid-range shooting, he's somehow phenomenal, one of the best all time.
Yeah.
I feel like the game just lends itself to taking more mid-rangers, and other teams are taking fewer threes. So it's almost like right now he goes up against Embiid. Embiid might hit some threes. You know, he goes up against some of these. Karl Anthony Towns can keep it even because shooting threes. If you go back to the 90s, Robinson, Hakeem, Ewing, all these guys were mid-range shooters. I think that almost closes the gap for Jokic. I think he'd be a better rebounder. And even defensively, where does Jokic struggle the most defensively?
Getting out in space, covering the
Guess what you're not doing in the 90s at all?
Point. That's the biggest point to me that I actually think is really, really astute.
And also physicality. The 90s was a more physical era, especially inside. I think that actually helps Jokic. He loves to be physical.
Jokic is the only superstar in the free throw era that doesn't play for the whistle. He may want it, but he doesn't get it. So to me, that conversation was like, he'd be ready for it. He gets beat up all the time. Can I ask one thing to play devil's advocate?
Please.
The difference in shooting, does that change spacing for Jokic offensively?
Of course.
And not that he couldn't navigate that, but just the way that he would be able to get the best out of a 5-man lineup.
I think there's no question that the game would change, and a lot of what he does out on the perimeter is obviously going to change. But you know what Jokic's really good at? Shooting in tight spaces. Like Jokic's really good at the little floater where there's guys not about to block it, but there's just a lot of people around, or he kind of finds little angles when it's in a crowd. And I just think that when you watch 90s basketball, a lot of your bigs were doing little one dribble up, and they're just trying to find a little window to kind of score in, and I think he would have been great at it. So I think the 90s, and then the last thing for the 90s that I think Jokic, this honestly to me might have been Jokic's best era. It was the 90s, just the style play. The other thing about it, probably the slowest decade in pace. And I think Jokic, when you watch him play, you make it a half-court game, he's great at that. Defensively in particular, like, all right, everything's condensed, it's more physical, and everything's slow and deliberate. And Jokic, he's great at that. If you go to the 80s, now you've got Kareem, you've got Moses, Parrish, Sampson, Lanier, and Hakeem, early era Hakeem. So the 80s is great as well for a lot of this. Here's what's different about this is the 80s had, I think, a lot of diversity of play, because I think of the 80s as more run and gun, fast breaking, free-willing. But not every team was that way. Like the Lakers were, the Nuggets obviously were.
Right. Some
of those other 80s teams were. But to me, this is the one where I'm not sure now how it would have translated. And then on top of that, the 80s, I think, and this is one of the things Kevin Garnett brought up that I thought was so fascinating in the discussion. He's like, it's not about the play. Those guys couldn't have survived the locker room. He's like, you think we would allow cell phones in the locker room in the 90s? Now, first of all, there were no cell phones. So
everyone would have adapted,
easy.
But I get it.
But nonetheless, the point was that there was and the further back you go, more of this like business mentality. It's like high school. Hey, you're a freshman.
Yeah.
You don't get to say anything in the locker room. You shut up, and if you look at me wrong, you're going to be. Yeah. And I do think there was that culture. And in the 80s, you get to that. How would Jokic have fared with that? There were a lot of players that came over that from Europe. That was the first wave of European players coming over, and a lot of them just didn't like it culturally.
I do wonder, too, Jokic did kind of have to harden his exterior a bit. Like and we've talked about this evolution from like, oh, I'm just happy to be here, fun opportunity. Here's a joke I've been working on.
Right.
To let's go win. This is maybe a stretch, but I am curious. He got to come into Denver, low expectations. Probably weren't a lot. There was definitely not a Kobe Bryant in the locker room. And was it kind of easier for him to grow into his skin here? Whereas, like, if he played in that era, would people have had no time and patience for his lack of seriousness or goofiness?
Early on?
Yeah, like, this guy is from Europe, and he doesn't even believe in himself. Like,
right.
We're not here to coach you into believing in yourself, bro. Like,
maybe it wouldn't have their personality wise. Maybe. I do think style of play though. When you watch the '80s Celtics, I'm like, oh yeah, they all play like Jokic. Like he would have fit in perfectly on those types of teams.
Well, that's the thing about even Garnett's response and what Anthony Edwards said about Jordan. Like I just feel like there's a golden rule that we all need to kind of accept, which is there's 15 to 20 guys that are just exceptions to all these conversations.
Yeah.
They all just would have been good no matter when they played. And I do think Jokic's one of those.
I think there's no question. That's why this it's kind of a fun exercise. Is I just think Jokic's skill set is so broad.
Yes.
And he's so good at so many skills that each era would emphasize a different part of his skill set, but that he would actually flourish. And this is why he's so good in FIBA, so good in the NBA, and he plays different roles. And it's like, yeah, man, his skill set is perfect to evolve to whatever is called on.
It's not, his success is virtually like not contingent upon anything.
Yeah.
And that's what's funny, because it used to be, well, he's a talent, but how do you figure this out? What team do you put around him? Like, how do you get the best out of him? And these are all valid conversations. It's just, ironically, I have found that, like, Jokic is a guy that you could build around, I think, as easily as anyone.
So let's go through. I have a couple other players that if you would have stuck them in different eras, they might have actually been better, or at least it would have been like, that's an era tailor-made for them. I'm going to start with Jamal Murray in the 2000s. Jamal Murray is such a good one-on-one player.
This is great.
He's like a great ISO player, and he reminds you of a lot of the late 90s, early 2000s guys, Steve Francis, and even Iverson to a degree, where it's like it was even more run him off a couple screens and get him on the elbow and everyone clear out and let him do their thing. And I think Murray might have actually been good. Now, is he good enough to be a superstar at that? I don't know. But I think Murray would have been a pretty good early 2000s player.
Dude, as far as having his own team, like let's just say there was no Jokic, honestly probably would have been better suited at that than I think the way the average modern guard is now.
Yeah.
He is so good at the kind of Kobe-esque back down mid-range or pull up mid-range and shots that, like, not a lot of people take in Denver's offense, but you're comfortable with it because it's Jamal. But back then, you weren't just comfortable with it. It was heavily encouraged. It was stylistically the way it was done. And if you shot 40%, no one really cared if you were good enough. And I just think that the style of play would have lent itself to Murray's. Murray's also not a free throw merchant at all. Like, he's born out of tough buckets and stuff.
You're right. Yeah.
I just think he would have actually fit well.
I think Aaron Gordon, if you dropped him into like 1987, 1989, somewhere in there, the Bad Boys Pistons era, one, like, all right, what's his weakness? 3-point shooting, foul shooting. Nobody's doing that, so it's fine. Teams take 3 a game, not Aaron Gordon. Then you just talk about he's physically mobile enough to guard your big wings of that era. And on top of that, he's just so physically dominant inside. I think he would have been like put him on Dominique. He's shutting him down. Physically, he matches up with him. I think Aaron Gordon in the 80s and 90s would have been a phenomenal player, like top 10 player.
Would he have been a small forward or a power forward?
I think power forward, maybe small forward even, but maybe a little bit of both. But I think he could have been like Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman is a better rebounder.
Sure.
But in terms of, hey, we need you to guard the point guard, we need you to guard the small forward, and he just physically overpowers him. And then you talk about Aaron Gordon gets cooked most, I think, by quick guards.
Sure.
Because he's not totally that. But you know what slows a guard down? Put a hand on him. Aaron Gordon out there on Isaiah Thomas, or
you're not going nowhere.
KJ, he's just, you're staying right here with me. So I think he would have been phenomenal. And I think Christian Brown, too. I actually think Christian Brown would have been great in the 90s. He, again, can't shoot, not really that big of a problem. And you get to be physical. He's great.
Can I tell you who I think's in the right era?
Who's that?
That's Michael Porter Jr.
I actually thought about this one. I was like, I don't know if there's
don't touch
it. DeAndre Jordan in the early 2000s. He came around just late. He came around right around 2009, I think 2010. Yeah. I think if he came around in 2004, he could have been. I mean, is he Tyson Chandler?
Look, I mean, he's still Lob City, DeAndre.
He had a great 2010s.
He had a great run, man.
But I think he could have been a little earlier.
He could have
been dominant.
His prime could have overlapped a little more.
Pick and roll.
Yeah.
Amari Stoudemire. Just put him on with 7 seconds or less Suns, and it's like, is this the best center ever? It's like,
well, he's a little stiff. Who cares?
And then Peyton Watson, to me, also is another guy that kind of feels like, because of the 3-point shot, he feels like a guy that might have thrived in the early 2000s. It's just, we had this in the late 2000s. Trevor Ariza was this incredible shutdown defensive guy because he was 6'8", 6'9", and could move. I'm like, Peyton Watson's better than all those guys. If you would have stuck him right before the 3-point revolution, he might have been the ultimate fill-in-the-gaps wing.
Yeah.
That everybody needed. Tayshaun Prince could be that type of guy.
There's also a chance he's right where he needs to be because of everything he hits.
That three-pointer.
But the versatility, too.
Yeah.
Like, right now, everyone's like, man, I need someone that can guard 4 positions. Unheard of at a certain point in basketball. But he is, I think, the right type of defender to aspire for that.
Let us know what you guys think about these players, and if there's an era you would have loved to have seen them in, especially if you've been watching basketball for a while.
Chat's trying to figure out why you didn't, like, where would Jalen Pickett have succeeded?
You know, I actually always wanted to put Pickett.
I know you did,
Can
actually.
I tell you something?
Yeah,
if you watch, like, Fat Lever play, if you watch the
here it is.
80s, they do back the ball down the entire way.
I do it.
It's one guy has the ball for, like, 20 of the 24 seconds, and then they throw a hard bounce pass into the post, and the guy shoots a fadeaway. When I watch Fat Lever, phenomenal point guard, triple-double threat, I'm like, Pickett maybe in the 80s is like really good.
I knew this.
Do you not agree?
No, I just had to set you up for it because I knew you'd say just what you said.
I didn't want to go there.
Just what you've said.
I didn't want to go there. Seize the court, well, all those things. I wanted to wrap up today. Dude, I have been going and watching Nuggets highlights lately.
Yeah.
Mostly Jokic, but I
right.
mix it up. You know, I go around. I spread the love. But I've been watching Jokic. Game 5 last year, I'm just so sad that game is not going to be one we get to remember forever, because he was not only perfect, but he had a couple like badass shots. If you remember the one he has on Rudy in like the late, it was kind of the one that put him up 15 in the fourth, and he makes it. Rudy Gobert fouls him. He shoots one of his disgusting little, like, goes super high and swishes in, and it's an and one. And the way he kind of like struts afterwards is just a total like, yeah, that's a masterpiece. It's like signing my name on the masterpiece.
I do feel like outside the Lakers series, I got more texts from friends about Jokic during that game than maybe any other.
Yeah, he was perfect.
They were like, this is insane.
He's literally perfect in that game. Highlight mixes. Power rank them for you. I think number one's Jokic. If you're just talking about and watching highlights, whose highlight reel is your favorite?
On the team right now.
And we'll even say it can be like not mixtape all time, but it's really just like you want to watch some highlights. Who are you going to Google? Who's the number one?
All right, great question. Faku's up there.
You're kidding.
I am. But he does have some good ones. I was thinking about the practice one we saw the other day where he catches it and throws it over his head. Anyway, that was a fun era, right?
The number one's Jokic, yeah?
Yeah, Jokic's number one.
All right. Number 2, I think, is kind of easy also personally, but maybe you disagree.
Is it going to be Jamal Murray for you?
I think Jamal, man, when he's on, he's unbelievably fun. This is why when we talk about our best moments of the Jokic era, Murray owns a disproportionately high amount of them, because highlight, mid-light, low light, he ranks lower in those ones. But highlight, he ranks so high. Not you?
No. Great. It's a great call. I'm just thinking about like how, because he just got here, he hasn't played a game yet. How high does Russell Westbrook go on this list?
That's a great question.
He might be number 3.
You think he's number 3?
Russell Westbrook's highlight mixes, dude.
I know.
He's an all-time, I've decided to jump from this spot on the floor, and my body's just going to do it. It doesn't matter what my load-up is. Like, dude,
and the energy. You know, there is something to a highlight mix when there's like a flex at the end or something. It's way better.
Even the ones that look awkward live on TV, if you cut it at the right spot, looks amazing.
Yeah. Westbrook's on there. I would put Michael Porter ahead of Westbrook personally.
Cool, me too. Just was trying to get a
one of my
feel
favorite.
for
Yeah,
the
of
room.
course. Listen to this guy. One of my favorite mixes, Kale, is Michael Porter. Every shot from like the 2021 season or something. It's literally every shot he takes, and somehow a highlight reel because his regular jumpers are so pretty that it's like awesome.
So many of his shots are so silly too.
Yeah, there's a lot of silly
So
ones in
all
there.
the makes look amazing.
There's-
Because all the
there's one mix where it's like every Michael Porter Jr. jump shot, but they get more ridiculous every time. So when you put that together, that one's great.
yeah, man.
I think PJ's up there. I think there's a significant drop off now. I didn't even think of Westbrook, but you know what? You're right.
it's probably Russ next to.
Even if we're just talking about recent, like we're not going back 10 years, but you just say like Russell Westbrook, I might have to do this. 2023 highlights, I might have to go back and see
Dude,
how fun it is.
They're awesome. Aaron Gordon though is next, Mr. Nugget.
So what are these highlights?
They're dunk highlights, and they do include
There are some good ones,
his
man.
Orlando years and the dunk contests. He's just a guy that's fun to punch into YouTube.
Outside of that, though, there's not like great crossover, crazy spin move, fall away. Like
No.
an Aaron Gordon fall away is kind of ugly.
No, but he does. But there's the Christmas dunk.
Yeah, it's
That
on there.
I could just watch that one by itself.
All right. After that, where are you going? It falls off here. And, like even if we project this year, you're like to sit and watch the mix.
Peyton Watson.
You think it's Peyton Watson?
But
Just a lot of blocks.
Yeah, but I said this a lot last year. They're just, for whatever reason, sometimes you go live and different guys and things about them pop than they do on TV. And I think Peyton pops on TV. But in person, it's jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
Like, he went from point A to point B that fast. Like, he I think, has, like, he's a defensive playmaker, highlight machine. And when he does dunk, he's got the Inspector Gadget arm thing,
Yeah. All right.
I would put him up there, dude.
Do you, Kale, have somebody that makes the list
On
here?
the Nuggets,
You got like Christian, Peyton, Julian, DeAndre, Zeke. Zeke might have to blow up.
I don't know how much playtime he's going to get this year, but a guy that has the potential to be electric is Trey Alexander. He's so twitchy and fun to watch, but that'd be the only other guy I could even mention.
His game to me is slightly more smooth than typical. You know, you talk about a guy with shake. Like he's almost smooth like Jamal is, but you're right about that. He could be on this list.
Post his Kansas days, no one's making a Christian Brown mixtape.
You don't think?
Dude, even if he's awesome.
I don't know, man. Christian Brown is an underrated dunker. He's an underrated, like, he doesn't get a lot of blocks and steals, but when he does, it's like in his face. I actually, you're right that we're down to like our 5th and 6th guy, but I think I would put him maybe even ahead of Peyton. I don't know.
He's the next guy. I think he might be the next guy. And he does
He has the Westbrook intensity.
He's got the Rudy Gobert dunk, which is like way up there.
Yeah, I'm buying all Christian Brown stock.
Right.
I am telling you, I'm paying a premium. I don't care. I know the stock is going up. All right, super chats.
Super chats from a super chat or the exquisite nugget. Vote equals Kenny. Adam equals Kyle. Kale equals Cartman. And no, Kale, my guy Noah didn't do anything wrong. Don't time out people for our takes. Yeah, Kale. Where's Eric? I miss my guy.
Eric told me he's been in Dallas, of course. He told me he doesn't miss the show at all.
Sick. Can't wait for him to be back.
Kale, great show today.
Thanks, guys.
Hit that outro music. Everybody, thanks for hanging with us on this fine Tuesday. Hope you enjoyed the show. I enjoyed doing it.
It was fun, man.
It was a good time. We're going to be back again tomorrow. Hit that like button on the way out.
We all silly like the mayor.